About 100 years ago, in a small village in Bengal, there lived a young man named Karim. The village was peaceful and surrounded by rivers, green fields, and bamboo forests. Life was simple. There was no electricity, no paved roads, and no modern technology. When the sun went down, darkness covered the village, and people relied on oil lamps and lanterns for light. But there was one mystery that had frightened the villagers for many years. Near the river stood an old abandoned house. Nobody lived there. The house had been empty for decades. Its walls were cracked, its windows were broken, and wild plants had covered most of the property. Yet every few nights, something strange happened. A bright yellow lantern would appear in one of the upstairs windows. The light would glow for hours, then suddenly disappear. No one knew who lit it. No one knew why it appeared. The villagers believed the house was haunted. Many people avoided even looking at it after sunset. Some claimed they had seen shadows moving inside. Others said they had heard strange voices during the night. As the years passed, the mystery became part of village life. Most people stopped asking questions, but one person never stopped wondering. His name was Karim. Karim was young, intelligent, and fearless. Unlike the others, he did not believe every rumor he heard. He believed every mystery had an answer. One rainy evening, Karim sat inside the village tea shop, listening to the older men talk. The rain was pouring heavily outside, drumming rhythmically against the tin roof of the shop. The smell of hot tea and wet mud filled the air. "The lantern appeared again last night," one man said, staring blankly into his small clay cup. Another man nodded nervously, wrapping his shawl tighter around his shoulders. "I saw it with my own eyes," he whispered. It was glowing so bright, casting long, eerie shadows across the river water. The old fisherman Rahman shook his head slowly, his face etched with deep worry. "That house brings nothing but trouble," Rahman said. "Our elders told us to leave it alone. Some things are not meant to be understood by ordinary human beings." The men in the tea shop quietly agreed, murmuring in low, fearful voices, but Karim remained silent, listening intently. His curiosity was burning brighter than ever. Finally, he stood up from his wooden bench. "I am going there tonight," Karim announced. The entire tea shop suddenly became dead silent. The casual chatter stopped, and the only sound left was the roaring of the wind outside. Several villagers stared at him in complete disbelief, thinking he had lost his mind. Rahman looked up, his eyes filled with genuine concern. "Karim, don't be foolish," the old fisherman pleaded. "Some mysteries should stay hidden. Do not go chasing ghosts in the dark." But Karim had already made his decision. He gave a reassuring smile to the old man and stepped out into the rainy night. Carrying only his trusted lantern, a blank notebook, a pencil, and a thick rope, he walked firmly toward the riverbank where the abandoned house stood. The cold wind blew fiercely through the dense bamboo trees, making a low, haunting whistling sound. Thick black clouds completely covered the moon, plunging the paths into absolute darkness. The warmth and safety of the village grew distant behind him with every step he took. Then, as he rounded the bend of the river, he saw it. The mysterious lantern. It was glowing with a warm, steady yellow light from the upstairs window. It looked exactly as the villagers had described for years, beautiful yet terrifying in the middle of nowhere. Karim felt his heart begin to beat much faster against his chest. For the very first time in his life, a cold shiver of nervousness ran down his spine. He stopped for a brief moment, looking at the glowing window, but he refused to let fear control him. He took a deep breath, gripped his own lantern tightly, and continued walking. Step by step, he approached the greatest mystery of his village. He reached the rusty iron gates of the massive estate. With a heavy push, the gate swung open, making a loud, agonizing metallic screech that echoed through the empty night. He walked through what used to be a beautiful garden, but was now a wild jungle of thorny bushes and overgrown weeds that tore at his clothes. The grand wooden front door of the mansion stood before him, slightly ajar, as if inviting him inside. Karim raised his lantern high, casting long, dancing shadows on the stone walls, and gently pushed the door open. The air inside the house was thick, heavy with decades of dust and the distinct smell of decaying wood. Massive cobwebs hung like curtains from the high ceiling, moving slightly in the draft. He stepped into the main hall. Every single step he took on the old wooden floorboards made a loud, echoing groan. He stopped and listened. The house felt massive, empty, and cold. Suddenly, a distinct sound came from the upper floor. It was a dull thud, followed by the faint rustling of pages. Kareem froze, his muscles tensing up. He held his breath, waiting. Realizing that whatever was making the sound was up there, he placed his hand on the ancient carved wooden staircase. As he began to climb, the stairs protested with loud creaks under his weight. He reached the first floor hallway, which was long, dark, and filled with old, broken furniture. But at the very end of this hallway, he noticed a thin line of yellow light leaking from underneath a closed door. The mysterious lantern was just on the other side. Kareem approached the door slowly, his boots making almost no sound now. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the cold brass doorknob. He turned it with extreme care, and with a soft push, the door swung open. The room inside was completely unexpected. Unlike the rest of the ruined mansion, this room was neat, tidy, and free of dust. In the center of the room sat a solid wooden table, and right on top of it was the bright yellow lantern, burning perfectly. But what shocked Karim the most was the person sitting right next to it. Resting in a large, comfortable armchair by the window was an old man. He looked incredibly ancient, with a long, snow-white beard that reached his chest and deeply wrinkled skin. He wore a simple white traditional tunic and held a large, leather-bound book in his lap, writing down notes with a fountain pen. Hearing the door open, the old man did not panic. He slowly turned his head to look at Kareem. His eyes were not scary, malicious, or ghostly. They were sharp, deeply intelligent, and filled with a gentle surprise. "So," the old man said, his voice raspy and low from years of disuse, "someone finally had the courage to come here." Karim lowered his rope and his notebook, completely stunned by the sight. "Who are you?" Karim asked, his voice shaking. "Are you a spirit? Are you a ghost?" The old man let out a soft, dry laugh that turned into a gentle cough. "No, young man, I am very much alive, just like you," the old man replied, gesturing for Karim to come closer. "My name is Professor Alim." Karim stepped inside the room, looking around in awe. Professor Alim explained that 40 years ago, he was a well-known scholar and a revolutionary writer who fought against oppressive rulers. To save his life and protect his massive, invaluable collection of historical documents, scientific texts, and ancient books, he had to disappear from the world. With the help of a few trusted friends who had now passed away, he staged his own death and turned this abandoned, feared house into his secret sanctuary. He had been living quietly in a well-hidden basement underneath the mansion for nearly 4 decades. "But why do you light the lantern every few nights?" Kareem asked, looking at the bright yellow glow. "If you want to remain hidden, isn't that dangerous?" The professor smiled warmly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "This house is my sanctuary, but it has also been my prison," the professor said softly. "I only come up to this room at night to read, write, and look at the world outside." But more importantly, the professor continued, looking directly into Kareem's eyes, this lantern was a signal. For 40 long years, I have been waiting for someone brave enough, someone curious enough to ignore the silly ghost stories and seek the truth. The professor sighed, looking at his frail, wrinkled hands. "I am very old now, Kareem. My time in this world is running out. I have accumulated a lifetime of knowledge, history, and science in these books. I needed an apprentice. I needed someone to pass this vast treasure of knowledge onto before I die." Kareem looked around the room again. Behind the heavy curtains, he now saw massive hidden shelves packed with thousands of books. Books on stars, medicine, literature, and geography. A true treasure trove of human wisdom, guarded from the world not by walls, but by the villagers' own fear. The great mystery of the village wasn't supernatural at all. It was completely human. Kareem smiled, feeling a profound sense of respect for the old scholar. He walked over, pulled up a small wooden stool, and sat down across from Professor Alim. That rainy night, Kareem did not use his notebook to write down scary stories about ghosts. Instead, he dipped his pen in ink and began to write down the very first history lesson taught by the professor. They talked for hours, sharing stories of the past, discussing the world, and exploring the secrets hidden within the pages of the old books. As the heavy storm finally passed, the early morning sun began to rise over the horizon. painting the beautiful Bengal sky in brilliant shades of gold, orange, and crimson. The mysterious lantern was finally blown out, its job for the night completed. Kareem walked back down the muddy path toward his village, his mind buzzing with new ideas and a completely fresh perspective on life. When he walked into the village tea shop, the old men were still there, discussing how worried they were about him. They rushed toward him in utter amazement, checking to see if he was unhurt. "What did you see out there?" Rahman asked, his eyes wide with anxiety. "Did you encounter the restless spirit? Did you survive the haunted house?" Kareem looked back at the old mansion standing tall beside the quiet river, the morning sun reflecting beautifully off its broken windows. He turned back to the villagers with a gentle, confident smile. "There are no spirits in that house," Kareem replied calmly, his voice filled with a newfound maturity. "There is only light, and it is finally time for our village to step out of the darkness of fear." From that historic day forward, Kareem visited the old house by the river every single evening. The bright yellow lantern still appeared in the window, but it no longer brought terror or nightmares to the people. To Kareem, and eventually to the entire village, that glowing light became a beautiful symbol of truth, education, and the extraordinary courage it takes to look beyond the dark. A